Welcome to Winners, Wallets, and Worldviews, the only show that's going to teach you how to be somebody.
Where in your life did you learn that you're not good enough?
Take what you're most passionate about and what you're most fearful of, and what is the plan to overcome that fear, and what is the plan to enact that passion.
All right, everybody, welcome to Winners, Wallets, and Worldviews. I am your host, AJ Armstrong. You can follow me on Instagram at AaronArmstrong33. That's AaronArmstrong33. Or you can always go to my website, AaronJArmstrong.com. Guys, today I am very pleased and honored to have an awesome guest with us today. Now, this guy is from the basketball world, and he's also into personal development, peak performance in sports, and he helps people maximize their potential in business, in life, through the power of mindfulness. So I have with me today Mr. Mike Lee. Mike, thank you for coming on the show, brother.
Thanks for having me.
This is incredible. So we talked just on the pre-show here a little bit about what you're up to lately, about kind of talk to me some about the basketball world and where you kind of, came from growing up and how sports played a role into your life, and then how that's kind of evolved now into mindset as well.
Well, I started a basketball training business and actually an AAU club. Not sure how many people from Wisconsin are listening to this, but I started a club called the Wisconsin Playmakers.
Oh yeah.
Essentially Playmakers basketball out of a college apartment at Stout.
I was Fox Valley Skills, so I don't know if you remember that.
Oh yeah, okay. So yeah, we were pretty much the second program outside of the Milwaukee Madison area, besides Fox Valley Skills, to have anything. And so I did that for 3 years and ran camps, and then turned the program over to a guy named Jason Jesperson. It's now huge. It's way bigger than we had ever done or ever planned on doing with the program when we first started. Have nothing to do with that anymore, but turned that over, moved to Milwaukee, built a basketball academy there. We have a academy that is located just outside of downtown Milwaukee, where we have training, basically personal training for basketball,
So tell me a little bit more about that experience of kind of building out that business. So as you kind of started with your AAU thing and then building into where you're more of your training. Tell me about that.
I mean, it was a ridiculous amount of work. I did not take a vacation for the first 5 years out of college. I worked 70, 90 hours a week, pretty much for 5 years straight.
Jeez.
It was, I mean, I remember my senior year in college, I was coaching college basketball. This is basically my last year when I was done playing. I was coaching college basketball. I was going to school, and I was building this basketball club. And I remember the nights where we would practice at 5:45 in the morning, and I would be at the office. I would literally sleep on our hardwood floor in the basketball offices with a blanket and a hoodie, because I'd be there till 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning working, and I wasn't going to go home. I just slept there for a few hours and got up at 5:30 to go to practice the next day. I mean, I think that's what it took for me. It takes what it takes. Everybody's path is different, but I think people don't realize the amount of sacrifices that you have to make to be able to create something out of nothing. And the biggest thing that I learned from that was you have to do, so many people are trying to get into entrepreneurship to create freedom in their life, to not have a boss, to be able to make money. And all that's great, but in my experience, I have not found, and I think a lot of other people that have been successful at this will tell you the same thing, is that if you do it for the money, it's never going to last.
Right.
You're going to run up against adversity. You're going to run into major challenges that are bigger than anything that you could have ever thought of. And unless you love what you do, unless you're in love with solving the problem that your business is there to do, you're never going to find the persistence to push through all the adversity. It's just not going to happen unless you do what you love. And there's going to be days where you don't love doing it, where you're not filled with inspiration, but you have to be in love with the problem that you're solving. And if you can do that, that's going to set you up for long-term success.
Yeah, I think you hit it right on the head. I mean, we always talk about how we want goals that pull us, that don't push us, right? And I think when you can do something from that like deep place of love, when your purpose is so much bigger than just money. And that's why like I've started hashtagging things money comes second, right? And it's not that money comes last, and it's just that it doesn't come first. The first thing that should come is the love for people, the love for others. And I love how you use the word love, right? You know, and it's like that's I think one of the huge takeaways for a lot of people is when they get into entrepreneurship, it's doing something with that purpose of contribution, service to others, right?
Right. Yeah, for anybody listening that's thinking about wanting to start a business for some of those reasons, for the financial freedom, for the time freedom, for the flexibility, I think the number one thing that you have to figure out is what problem do I want to solve? What is a point in my life or somebody's life that I deeply care about? What's a pain point in their life that I want to solve? And then how can I expand that? How can I systemically create ways to solve those problems? And that's a great place to start, is just finding a problem that you're passionate about solving. I mean, everybody's got something in their life that they think could be done better. They think a problem could be solved in a different way. A problem could be solved more efficiently, more effectively. And if you can find that, just create awareness of that, I think that's a great start to something that you want to create.
Yeah. So at this point in your life, so you're sleeping on a gym floor and you're training round the clock. And then what kind of started to happen after that?
Really, it was just word of mouth. I mean, everything that we built was through word of mouth or through social. I mean, we really were some of the first people in the basketball world to really put content out on YouTube. I think this is so much more difficult now. I mean, the market is so saturated, but if you can find a platform that is underutilized and figure out a way to capitalize on that, like for the speaking business that I'm building, I'm really focusing on LinkedIn because it's a platform that has people, it has an audience, but it's not necessarily driving the engagement like Facebook or Instagram. So finding a platform that nobody else is using yet, or that has potential to be able to jump on that, could be a huge benefit for you. But that was a huge benefit for us, was jumping on Twitter early, on Twitter in I think 2008. Obviously, relevant anymore, but that was a big thing, big advantage for us. Going back to your original question, it was word of mouth, and it was Twitter. It was treating every player that we worked with, even if it was at a camp, like they were the only client that you had. And being able to give them that amount of attention and that amount of care and that amount of presence with them is what really created an experience that made people want to talk about it. And I think that's, we talk about referral marketing and different strategies that are in that space. And I think the easiest thing, or the best thing that you can do to get people to talk about you is just give them an experience that blows them away, that they can't help but tell other people about it because they want to share something amazing that happened to them without asking anybody to share it for you.
That's pretty, yeah, that's a great idea. So I love what you said there. And it's about creating almost so much value for your client that you create these like raving fans, if you will, right? To where they feel like the only thing they can do is talk about you because they're so satisfied with the service. That's something that we underplay in marketing, I feel like, right? Like we talk about customer service, but we don't like truly bake it into our business models as if it's one of the most valuable things to us. I mean, I'd say people also do that with their employees. Like they don't treat their employees with such like an intense integrity, or they don't treat their customers with so much value and integrity. And I know that's a big piece of probably what set you up to be successful. And tell me exactly what things you would do with some of your athletes or some of the people involved with your organization on a personal level that you thought really helped influence them.
Definitely when I was coaching, when I was running the AAU program, no matter how hard I was on kids, no matter how high of standards I held them to, at the end of the day, I always made them know that I love them. Still to this day, some of the kids that I have relationships with, they know it. They know that I will do anything for them. And I remember, I think that's when everything changed. I remember, so really one story, and the story is, there was a kid named Paul Jesperson who played at the University of Virginia, he played at Northern Iowa, and he's coaching for the Atlanta Hawks. And when he was in 7th grade, he was the first class of kids that came in with our AAU program. And Paul had a ton of potential, but I was also harder on Paul than harder on Paul than, there was another kid that I was super hard on too, but harder on Paul than anybody else. And for the first few months of the season, Paul thought that I hated him. I mean, he literally thought that I hated him because I was so hard on him.
Right.
And finally we sat down and had a conversation during the middle of the season. And I basically said, Paul, what do you want? Like, what do you want to do? He's like, I want to be a Division I basketball player. And I'm like, and I said, I want that for you too. Whatever you want, I want. And I was like, okay, so what are you willing to do in order to make that happen? And he said, anything. He's like, I'll do, whatever you think that I need to do, whatever you tell me to do, I'll do. And I'm like, Paul, this is why I'm being so hard on you. And this is not about me versus you. It's about us together trying to create your dream. And me being hard on you is not about my ego. It's not about me. It's not about you making mistakes. It's about, this is what needs to be done in order for you to reach your dreams, in order for you to play at the highest level. And no matter how many mistakes you make, no matter how many times they yell at you, no matter how many push-ups they make you do, at the end of the day, know that I always will love you. And that just, I've seen I shouldn't say a lot, but I've seen some coaches who, and this can go for coaches in the sports world, coaches in the business world, people in leadership positions. The best coaches are the ones that are able to master the relationships and they're able to master the game. And when you can do those two things, that's when you set yourself up to be ridiculously successful. A lot of guys are great at X's and O's and strategy and creating great marketing plans, but they're terrible with people. And some people are great with people, but they don't understand the technical side of it, the strategic side of it, and they don't have as much success either. So when you can put those two things together, and I think using basketball as an example, like Phil Jackson or Steve Kerr or Brad Stevens, like some of these guys, they understand both worlds and they're able to merge it to be able to get the most they can out of every player that they work with.
That's a great point.
And I think all that just comes from a foundation of love. And I know I've thrown that word out probably 15 times already in 10 minutes, but I really believe that it's foundation.
I agree with you. I mean, there's a really good book I read and I recommend it. It's called The Servant, and it's like a narrative format, but it talks about, really the theme in that book is about how leadership in and of itself is about having a love for people, the people that you serve. And I like how you brought up that it's not only just, the relationship aspect, but it's also the strategy, the X's and O's. So it works in coaching, it works in business, it works in any type of leadership arena, right? It's that we can't have one without the other to be that perfect balance. You could be an okay coach if you have good relations, you have a team with good chemistry and you have good relationships with your players and have respect for you. But you can be an okay coach if you have a good strategy, but the relationships aren't there. But to be a great coach, you need to have both. And I love how you brought that up. And the love for people is the bond. It's the glue. It's the most authentic thing out there that we have.
Right. The thing that I think a lot of people don't realize is that in every relationship that they are building, you're coming from one or two places. You're either coming from love or you're coming from fear.
Yes.
It's a choice that you make. It's a choice that you make in how you're going to show up every single day with the people that you're leading. And if you can create the awareness of it and choose how you want to show up, choose to show up from a place of love, even if it's not easy. It doesn't mean that it's going to be easy all the time. It doesn't mean that it's going to feel good all the time. Having love might mean having a really difficult, honest, candid conversation with somebody. That might be the deepest form of love because that's what they need in that moment.
Yeah, speak more to that. Speak more to that. Because I know, especially as new leaders, I see with really young leaders, it seems like there's two types. There's people that come across like, I've got the power and it's just all business. And then there's this other type of leader that comes across and they just want to be friends with everybody. So tell me how you kind of break that up. What is the right amount of love and what is the difference between a love like a parent would have and then something like that, right?
That's a good question. I think the biggest thing is when you're trying, especially you talk about new leaders, right? You're coming in, you have to find a way to connect to people. So there's a few steps that I think need to happen in order for you to really be able to get the most out of your people to maximize the potential. Number one is you got to connect to them. Unless you connect to them, you have to connect to them, so you can communicate to them. When you can communicate to them, you can build trust. And when you build the trust, then you're able to challenge players, challenge people that are working for you. Because that is the only way that they grow is when they're challenged. And without that connection and the communication and the trust, you're not able to really challenge somebody. You're not able to hold them accountable. And when you can do that, I think that's when you're able to push people to their potential. But it all comes back to that just decision to care about people. It really comes down to that, and that's the foundation of being able to challenge them and to get them to maximize their potential.
I like the word you use, decision to care about people, because I think that we're often, and this happens, I see it in relationships people have, with their spouse or significant other. And when it comes to the word love, we act like love is just a feeling that happens and it's just this attraction, right? When in reality, love is an action, right? It's something that needs to be done. And when you frame it like this is a decision, I'm going to decide in this moment to love this person and express, my affection for them, or I'm going to be able to do what's right for them out of their best interests and their well-being and their long-term well-being and all these types of things you think about as a leader. It has to sometimes go against what you're feeling, and it has to be a decision to do it, right? And a good friend of mine he was a Navy, whatever they call it in the Navy, I know military ranks, but he was like a Navy NCO. He was like an E8, I think. And he's, really kind of more of an old school leader, but he believes in so much about knowing your people. And it's like kind of what you said too, when you said you had a player, you said, what are your goals? Where are you trying to go? They tell you, it's like, okay, now it's business. We're going to do whatever it's going to take to get you there. And that's really what the love is. It's like, I need to do what's in your best interest at my own sacrifice.
It's doing that and also making it about something bigger than either of you separate. About making it about something that is And I see that the same thing goes with somebody in a business. It's when it comes down to situations like that, it's not about me versus you or you versus them. It's about what do we need to do to fulfill the mission of the organization.
Yeah.
And then you take a lot of the emotion out of it. You take a lot of the personal stuff out of it because it's not about that. But you're at the end of the day, that is what you were there for. That is what you were there to do, and that takes what it takes. And it's not about the personal stuff. And I think that being able to do that, being able to stay focused on what the vision is, what you were trying to create, takes a lot of the personal stuff out of it.
Yeah.
The emotion
Yeah.
out of it.
Yeah. And I think that's a good point too. It's like when you look at what purpose is, so we talk about on this podcast all the time, finding your personal purpose and what that looks like. But then you've got to understand that there's the mission too. So as you guys become leaders in your businesses, right? So like not everyone's an entrepreneur. Eventually they become, an actual CEO, which is more of they have a staff, you have a team, and you grow and thrive from there, right? But when you start to have these types of teams, you need to be able to communicate the purpose and communicate the vision in such a way that everybody can rally around it and really buy into it in a way. So Mike, I wonder, what is your thought? How do you create, first of all, a purpose that's meaningful enough to get that type of buy-in from people?
Well, I think it goes back to the first. I think you find your purpose when you figure out what problem you want to solve.
Okay.
I think that's the first step to finding your purpose, finding your why. And when you can do that, well, I guess go back to your question again.
Yeah, so it's just about how do you really get people rallied around the purpose and the vision?
Yeah. So I think that's being able to define the problem so you can find your purpose. I think that's a big piece of it. And I also think scheduled, consistent communication is key as well. Anything that you can do to consistently be dropping nuggets about what you need to be doing and finding different ways to communicate the vision and to remind people of that is super important because we get bogged down in the day-to-day tasks a lot and I call it staying future focused. How are we keeping the future in mind of what we're trying to create? And I think just having the consistent communication is huge for that, and finding different avenues to drop it in, whether that's a simple text to somebody, or it's sending them a handwritten note, or it's sending them something in the mail, whatever it is, to find ways to remind them of why they are doing what they are doing.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that too. Like just the communication piece, right? So it's one thing to have a vision and then have a purpose with it and then know what problem you're solving. But in order to really get that to the next level, it takes that, me and our team, we call it radical transparency based on the book Principles by Ray Dalio. And that's so we can everybody knows what we're trying to accomplish all the time. Then you get all the different ideas from people because of that. And I think that's really incredible. And I like how you're so focused, like you're solution focused in everything you keep saying, Mike, which is awesome because so many people go out there and they just want to say, this is my passion and I'm pretty good at this, and therefore this is my purpose. It's like, no, it becomes your purpose when there's value attached to it, right? And that's the trifecta. It's the passion, it's the strengths, and it's the value. And the value is the solution to the problem. Is this a problem that people are willing to pay for? Or is this a problem that people need to have solved? Is this something that's going to contribute? Right.
Or it's, the other thing is you can, it doesn't necessarily need to be a problem that people need to solve. It might be an experience that they want to have, or providing value in some sort of. You're right. It's providing value in some sort of way that people are going to pay for. The biggest thing that people will pay money for is for you to change their state so they can have a different experience. That's what pro athletes get paid so much money for, because people get out of their heads and into a different experience. That's what musicians get paid so much money for. It's because they create a state change in the people so that they're able to get out of their reality, their current reality, and into something else for a moment. And that's definitely another way, is by creating
Yeah.
to get people to change their states. And the
Well,
highest paid people in the world are ones that can change people's states.
that's very interesting to think about, and you're right. And I guess I never thought of it that way. One of my big things we're big on over here is with storytelling, and it's the same thing. And when you frame it like that, it's when you get out of your own experience and you can, vicariously live through another person's experience. That would explain a lot of things around why sports are so popular, why movies are so popular, why theater is so popular, singing, all of those types of things, why we're so connected to stories, why people are listening to this podcast, right? And so they can kind of unplug from their current world and be entrapped in this conversation.
Yeah, for sure. You're trapped in the conversation, and for some people it's about plugging into something else that is giving them the ability to create a new future.
Yeah.
And I think that's what obviously a lot of podcasts are about entertainment, but something like what you're doing is, it's about giving people access to a vision of a bigger future, of something greater than their current circumstances, and then being able to tap into that. And I think that's huge.
Yeah, that's really good. Just having the purpose behind stuff and how we kind of unfold in that way. So I think the big takeaway from just that little segment was really, creating, value for people in a way, creating an ability to vicariously let people into whatever solution you're providing. So that's interesting. Let's come back to your story a little bit. So it was this, you're at Thrive 3, which is your business, and you're rocking and rolling, and you're working hard hours. You're starting to have some success. You're giving so much value to your clients that it just becomes, word of mouth and referrals, which, I say is still the best way of marketing, is when you just get results and referrals. And, people talk about social media, all this other stuff. When you get referrals, that's truly when you know that you're really making it. So then what's next for you? What kind of comes after that in your business adventure?
So we had been about couple years. Yeah, we had been in Milwaukee, had our academy open for a couple years. And what started to happen was we started to get requests we get AAU coaches, say requests, but we get calls or texts from AAU coaches and say, hey, I got this kid, super talented, but can't pay for workouts. Can you work him out? His mom works 3 jobs and he's never met his dad. And can you work him out? Can you get him into some workouts? And we started working with some of these kids more and more. And it was super rewarding. And we decided to partner with a couple other people in the community, and we decided to build this organization called Drive as a nonprofit for inner city at-risk kids, to give them access to professional level basketball training, strength conditioning, tutoring, mentoring, whatever they needed to get out of their current circumstances and use basketball as a vehicle for a better life, to get to college, to maybe be a pro. We were going to provide for them. And so I got super wrapped up into that. I put a ridiculous amount of money and time into building this nonprofit, and really this is where a lot of the yoga initially came in, because I was so stressed out trying to build this nonprofit and run this other for-profit company at the same time, that I needed to create some sort of change in my personal life and being able to handle all this stuff. And so that's really where that went. We started, we were building it, we ran a few programs, and that's really when it came to my goal was to get Drive off the ground and running and then be able to expand it into other cities. And the first place I wanted to expand it to was to Los Angeles, to Southern California, because I would get super depressed in the winters in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
I'm talking.
I can relate.
I'm talking not getting out of bed till 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, depressed. Like it was like.
Yeah, not that depressed, but yeah.
Yeah. And so people experience it to different degrees, but it was brutal. So my goal was to drive off the ground and running and into somebody else's hands before fall of 2014. And that ended up not happening. And I decided that I had to do something for myself. I pretty much had made decisions in my life based on my career versus personal decisions for the first 10 years. I'd never made a decision for I shouldn't say never, but very, very, very rarely made a decision for myself. And I decided enough was enough. I needed to get out. And so I moved out to LA, and that's really when everything kind of started to change. Is I decided to get off this antidepressant medication that I was on. Getting off of it was like getting off of heroin. It was the most challenging thing that I've ever done in my entire life.
Well, tell me about that. That must be crazy.
It was chronic emotional instability. I would go from anxiety to depression to laughing to crying, all within the matter of 2 hours. And I could not focus on work. Some days I would work for 10, 20 minutes at a time because my mind was just racing like crazy. And that's when I picked up this meditation practice. And I committed to that. And that was the only thing that gave me a chance to be present during the day, was a daily meditation practice and a crap ton of yoga. And that was it. Some days that was all I could do. And so that lasted, it took me about 10 months to get off of that medication. And it's called, there's withdrawal symptoms, like the initial withdrawal symptoms that people have when they get off of the medication. Sometimes that's an antidepressant medication, sometimes that's oxy, sometimes it's alcohol, sometimes it's heroin. And then there's the post-acute withdrawal symptoms, which are the things that stay with you for some people for a long, long time. I'm talking 5, 10 years after they've been on these substances, that they still have brain fog, they're still irritable, that they still have anxiety, that they still have other issues that are associated with it. And what I've come to learn is that lots of times it's not about the medication. Getting off the medication was the biggest challenge, but the underlying issue that they're still dealing with is unhealed trauma, whether that's something that is causing them PTSD, or that is causing them just difficulty handling different situations, or depression or anxiety. A lot of that is unhealed trauma, whether that's from something that was a one-time incident, or just chronic things that built up over time. A lot of those the post-acute withdrawal symptoms I think are related to that. Totally jumping around here, but that's really where a lot of what I'm doing now came in. Was I started practicing all these things, and I realized that there was a direct connection between how much I meditated and my ability to lead other people, ability to impact other people, to perform, to coach, were all amplified when you had a meditation practice. So I knew if this could help me during a time where I felt so broken, so unstable, so not myself, that it could drastically impact the lives of other people if they put some of these things into practice, who weren't dealing with the underlying issues that I was dealing with. And so I built this other organization called MindShift Labs to teach people how to optimize their minds for peak performance and leadership through mindfulness and emotional intelligence.
So you initially kind of discovered this through your own personal, meditation, yoga practices, and then you were able to apply it to some of your athletes. Is that how it first started, or where did you first start applying it with other people?
Yeah, it started in the basketball space. I started doing it at camps that we've run, and it would be, I'd take 15, 20, 30 minutes out of the camp to explain what it was, explain why it was beneficial, tie it to basketball, and then take them through an experience. And the interesting thing was I was kind of hesitant to do it at first because it was not in alignment with what their expectations were for coming to a basketball camp.
Yeah, I believe it. You got some basketball players trying to shoot free throws, and they're just doing, a meditation session over in the corner. That might be a little strange to like parents and stuff, I imagine. Or
yeah, exactly. That was, and so I really had to figure out a way to tie it to basketball. But the interesting thing was that the feedback I got from kids was, "Can we do that again after lunch?" It was their favorite thing that they did, and I think it's because the kids that are at camp have grown up in a world that they've never not known technology. They've never been able to strategically shut off their minds and disconnect it, and they don't know what it's like. They've never had that experience before because nobody's ever made them do it because they're addicted to their technology, which is a whole other conversation. But they loved it, and so I've taught meditation to at least 5,000 kids in the past 3 years.
Wow.
And so that's where it started, and then I started reaching out to parents of kids that were in leadership positions at companies and going into their organizations to speak and introduce meditation and mindfulness and how it's beneficial to them from a leadership and performance perspective, and that's where that started to grow in that area.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. So you go into I guess, you're going into a company at this point and you're about to talk about meditation, mindfulness to a group of, corporate employees, which some of them may have been immersed in the personal development world and have attempted to try some of that. Majority of them probably not.
Right.
So how do you deliver that? How is that received? Tell me how you kind of go about talking about it.
I think the two things that you need when you're going in to introduce something new, something that people fear the things that they're not educated about. And so when I go in and I talk to a company, the two things I think you need is you need stories because you need to connect to them at an emotional level, and then you need the science to back it up so it's proven that they know that it works. And I go in and I talk about all the science behind it. I talk about how when you have a meditation practice, a consistent practice for an 8-week span of time, that areas in your brain physically change. There's just like when you lift, an athlete lifts, you see physical evidence of change by the way that their body transforms. When you have a meditation practice, your brain is physically changing. There's an area called your neocortex that's responsible for your executive function and your decision making and your the rational part of your brain. That area actually grows and it gets bigger. There's an area called your amygdala, which is the first part of your brain that is not ignited, but it is, can't think of the right word, that is the first part of your brain that is reacted when we go into a stress response, and that area of our brain actually shrinks so that we become less reactive to stress in our environment. So if we're less stressed, we're less reactive to things in our environment, it improves our ability to focus, it improves our...
And how much meditation does it take to get to that, to where you start to notice differences scientifically?
The studies are, I shouldn't say they're all over the place, but they are consistently, a lot of them have shown that 8 weeks is the number where you can see measurable change. They've hooked up monks who have been meditating for 20, 30, 40, 50 years and compared the different areas of their brains to the average person, and they're significantly different.
Wow. So it's pretty powerful. Just what a habit can do over 8 years of just that. I mean, that's just meditation.
8 weeks.
Yeah. Or sorry, 8 weeks. Yeah. That's what yeah.
Yeah. So it's, anybody can do anything for 8 weeks. And I think really, honestly, I think it takes 10 days, a couple weeks to really even be able to settle into a practice. The hard thing about meditation is it's like swimming, right? You can have somebody read a book about swimming, but you really don't know what it's like until you jump in the water. And it's an experiential learning and understanding that sometimes is hard to put into words. It's a lot easier to, because this is really what happened to me. I mean, the first time that I ever meditated actually was when I was probably 15 or 16 years old. My cousin went to live in an ashram in India for 6 months, and she came back and she taught me how to meditate, and had a crazy experience my first time. I just dropped into everything and let go, and she had to wake me up out of it because I was so gone. I wasn't sleeping. I was just so deep into meditation. But I didn't do it enough in order to, and I didn't know it was a great experience, but I didn't know the science behind it and why it would be beneficial for me. And if I would have had both of those, the experience, and that's the other thing. So I talked about, stories and statistics, or stories and science, but I think you also need to have an experience, and that's what gets people to buy in. But going back to the whole book thing, I mean, she would send me books and I would read books. I read a few books on meditation, but it wasn't connecting, because you have to have that experience. And now that I've had some experience with it, going back and reading about it and reading about what is changing in your brain and techniques and why different things are happening, it is a lot easier to digest the information and assign a meaning to it that is beneficial for results that I want to get in my life.
Yeah. So yeah, this is incredible, especially for people that aren't familiar with some of the benefits as well with meditation. Talk to me a little bit more about just mindfulness in general. I know you have a published book on this. The book is called Untrain. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about that thesis and what that book talks about a little bit in the world of mindfulness.
So before we even get into that, I should probably define what mindfulness is for people.
Yeah.
There's different definitions. The challenge with it is that it's because science has proven what meditators and yogis have known for thousands of years, it's become more mainstream. And the biggest misconception that I see people have about the word, about the topic, is that it's anything that has to do with the mind is mindfulness. And that's really not the truth. Meditation is more so, we'll get into that in a second, but mindfulness is specifically, the way that I define it is the skill or the ability to create the awareness of your thoughts, feelings, and actions in the present moment. And meditation is simply an exercise used to cultivate that level of awareness. Meditation is nothing more than exercise for your brain. It's no more than training for your brain, or a way to train your brain to cultivate those states. So when you get into it, it's obviously there's more layers and layers to it that you can get into, but at a fundamental level, it's really just the awareness. It's operating at a higher level of awareness of your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions.
Yeah. So it's basically when you start to become more self-aware, and you start to become aware of, your body, your being, your thoughts more specifically. I think that's an interesting step, right? When you can first recognize what a thought is and think about a thought, right? Because the activity of thinking is something as well. So it's like, without trying to make too many people's heads explode, it's almost like this is really the first step to, getting into the next level of your own personal growth and development, is to recognize what your own thoughts are so you can eventually have control over those in a way.
Right. Yeah, for sure. And I think another piece that people get confused on is that I'll talk about meditation to some people and they're like, oh yeah, I do reflection. I sit and I think about my thoughts. And that's not what it is. It's about creating awareness of what you're thinking about and creating awareness of your thoughts, becoming the observer of your thoughts, so that the emotion tied with your thoughts doesn't bring you in.
Right.
And so that you can create that detachment from your thoughts, you become the observer of it, so it doesn't emotionally drag you into certain thinking patterns, to reactions, to behaviors. And then the gap that's in between that, from when you have the thought and then you create a gap, you create a pause, so that you can strategically respond and take action that is in alignment with your values. That's the power of meditation outside of the actual practice. It's not about just sitting there for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes of meditating. It's about training your mind to be in a state so that you can live in alignment with your values, so that you can show up fully engaged and with presence every day that you step out of your meditation.
So it's kind of like, I guess, for an analogy, it's almost like if you're looking at the default wiring of yourself, it's going to be to let, your emotions, and your thoughts are going to drive your emotions. Your thoughts are going to drive your emotions, right? And then it's like, what meditation can give you the ability to do is unplug that and rewire it into something that's a little bit more significant, if that makes sense. So like, instead of just letting, you see something, an event happens, you think about it, it drives an emotion. You can actually stop the circuit before it gets from thought to emotion. And then you can start to reprogram it and interpret the thought and plug it into something with more value. And then your value will drive your emotion. I don't know if that made sense, but it made sense to me.
Yeah. And the other piece of it is sometimes not taking action at all. And I think that's something that's of tremendous value, is deciding when and when not to act, deciding when and when not to respond. And that pause creates the power of choice.
Yeah, this is great stuff, man. I think we got time for maybe like one or two more questions here, because this is pretty cool. I like how we went into some of this and learned a little bit about your story and how you built your business and where you came from, and then how that transitioned into this place of stress and anxiety and depression that you were in, how meditation pulled you out of that, and how you were able to take that story and struggle and start transforming other people through your writing, through your teaching, through your coaching, through your business, which is now MindShift Labs, which it sounds like is becoming a lot bigger as you start to grow now, with working with athletes to corporations all over the place, organizational leadership, all sorts of other stuff. So what are you kind of working on today now with your business? What's kind of been going on? Any programs or events or anything else that's been coming up in your life with this?
Right now, it's really just booking speeches, and if people want to go deeper after I go in and talk somewhere, they want to go deeper into some more personal stuff, then building out coaching clients. And those are really the two main things that I'm working on. So it's, if you have a company event, your annual company event, or your quarterly meetings with your leadership team, or any sort of event around, in the wellness industry, anything like that, that's what I'm focusing on.
Yeah, that's awesome. So people, guys out there, if you're listening, if you want to change it up a little bit and you want to get a speaker or someone interesting into your world, reach out to Mike. Mike, what's, a good way to get in contact with you on Instagram, the socials, your website? What's a good way to connect? Because I think this is something that, we want more people to be aware of. I think it's going to help people's business grow, especially if you're in a mid to large company where you have the opportunity to bring in a unique speaker to just change the perspective than what you're not always getting with leadership, but the ability to lead yourself first. I wonder if you could reach out to Mike. So Mike, what are some of those channels they can reach you at?
Yeah, before I even get into that, I think that's when it comes to the corporate stuff, it's really the foundation of what I'm doing. I mean, we focus so much on building systems, building technology, building processes that we forgot who actually builds those in the first place. And the other thing that we talk about a lot of is transforming our cultures. What do we want our cultures to look like? And we are trying to create a lot of these changes in ways that are fleeting. Like adding a new ping pong table is not going to transform your culture. Because, and I'm serious, because it's not changing the people. Your people are your culture. When you transform your people, you're transforming your culture. And so when I was in the basketball world, it was really the same approach. It does not matter how great your offense looks on paper. Anybody can come up with a great offense on paper or steal something from Brad Stevens or steal something from Calipari or steal something from Billy Donovan. But unless your players have the fundamental skills to pass, to dribble, to shoot, to be able to play under pressure, they're not going to be able to execute that offense at the highest level. And so it's the same in business. If your people don't have the self-awareness, if they don't have the emotional intelligence, if they don't have the ability to communicate in an authentic, vulnerable way, no matter what systems or process or technology you develop, they're not going to be able to execute it to the fullest potential without those fundamental human skills. And so I think that's the thing that we're missing is we're trying to create change from what I call external circumstances, external things. And that change has to come from a place that's unshakable. And that is the place that's within you. And when you can create that change there, it will flow out to every single other area of your business.
That's a really good point, because it's so easy to get caught up in the easy thing is to say, like, the ping pong table, or we're going to put up signs and give people benefits or whatever. That's going to make the people change and the culture transform. But in reality, it's about internally changing every single person's heart in a way for the positive good of the direction of the company or the purpose or whatever you're trying to lead.
Exactly.
That's a huge distinction that people need to take away too. As a leader, as a truly transformational leader, you have to have the ability to change people's hearts. And I think that is something that people don't even want to touch in a lot of corporate settings, because it gets too personal. And it's like, at some point though, at what point is the line drawn, right? Because it's like, you want to be as personal as you can so that you can truly help this person in every way in their life do what their God-given purpose is. But then there's that corporate barrier that we want to stand behind and say, we don't want to talk about, all these type of personal trauma or any other issues that you're going through, or any whatever inner fire has happening within you. We don't want to talk about that. We just want to make sure that you're just good to work, and it's like, that's where I think that the leadership line is only going to be so effective if you don't cross that barrier at some point.
Yeah, I mean, I 100% believe that the companies that are going to be super successful 10 years from now, maybe even sooner, 10, 15 years from now, are going to be the ones that take a more holistic approach to building in well-being as a strategy for them to perform at their highest level. Because the bottom line is, every single day, the line between work and the line between your personal life becomes even more blurred. And there's studies have shown, like Deloitte did a study that shows that 61% of employees thought it would be 61% of employees in the study that they did wanted or thought it'd be very beneficial for their company to offer on-site mental health counseling, and only 20% of the companies were doing it. And every single day, those, people are looking for, I don't want to go like super deep into this down this road, but there's a reason that yoga and meditation and other practices like that have become more and more popular over the past, really more drastically over the past like 10 to 15 years. But that's because the place where people used to go for those solutions for their psychological suffering has failed them. And it's the truth. And some people still get what they need out of it, but for a lot of people, it's failed them. And people are looking for an accessible place where they can do that, and if they can do it at their workplace, it helps drive employee engagement, it helps retain employees, it helps develop your culture. And I think, the companies that start to offer that and build that into their overall strategy are going to be the ones that are truly succeeding in the next 10 to 15 years. I mean, I had this up on I don't remember where I got it. I think I got it from a Brene Brown book, but there's a quote from, no idea how to pronounce this guy's name, Manoush Shafiq. He's a director for the London School of Business, and it kind of sums up every single thing that we're talking about. He says, in the past, jobs used to be about muscle. Now they're about the brain, but in the future they will be about the heart. And
Ooh.
that is 100% true.
Oh, that is good stuff, man. I think that's a good quote to almost end this thing on. Right. But, well, Mike, we're running short on time here. So I just wanted to let you know, that I totally believe in all this stuff that you're doing. And I think this is incredible. And thank you for sharing all this stuff with our listeners, because, we talk about, I think a lot of people in this, self-development, professional development industry understand a lot of the basic concepts, but a lot of people aren't taking the action into what mindfulness really looks like. So that's why I thought it was really cool how you could bring in how it works with athletes, corporate settings, leadership, how it all ties into that internal leading of yourself and helping other people lead themselves as well, which is truly the root cause of the issues in most circumstances, right? Sure. So thank you so much for sharing that today on the show. So Mike, where can we find you? How do we get a hold of you if we want to connect?
The two places that I'm hanging out the most online are Instagram and LinkedIn. Both of them are Who Is Mike Lee. You can find out there. There's a million other Mike Lees already taken. So those are my two handles, Who Is Mike Lee, LinkedIn and Instagram, and then MindShiftLabs.com.
Awesome. Hey, Mike, thank you so much for coming on the show today. This was incredible. Thank you for sharing everything you've learned in your business journey. Once again, guys, my name's Aaron Armstrong, AJ Armstrong. I am the host of Winners Wallets Worldviews. You can find me on Instagram at Aaron Armstrong 33, or you can go to my website, aaronjarmstrong.com. Feel free to connect. And thank you so much, guys, for listening today. Go out there and be somebody.
Thanks, Aaron.